So let's get started.
Okay.
I am Lauren Feldman. I am the founder and editor-in-chief of 21 Hats. Many of you have probably never heard of 21 Hats. It's a community, an online community for business owners. We have a daily email newsletter and a weekly podcast. And if you're interested in checking it out, you can go to 21hats.com. But we're here today for my very special guests that I am really thrilled have joined us today. They are Adela Colvin of Lola Bean Yarn Company, Gigi Glaspie, who is a very prominent influencer in the knitting industry, Gigi, and Felicia Eve, who owns String Things Studio in Brooklyn, New York. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. And thank you all of you who have registered and shown up for this conversation. You obviously are well familiar with the chat function in Zoom. Thank you for chiming in already. And let me tell you, we're going to take questions. Feel free to throw your questions into chat at any point. You can start anytime. We'll get to as many as we can. But I want to start by going through a little bit of the background of Adela and Gigi and Felicia and kind of how they got where they are. And then we'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the industry, why there is, of all things, a culture war in the yarn industry. Try to make some sense of that. Adela, let's start with you. How did you discover knitting?
My next door neighbor, Bonnie, Mrs. Bonnie Maticic, she was a retired principal from Battle Creek, Michigan. My husband had to go to Afghanistan to teach, and I was home by myself. Ms. Bonnie was aware of that fact, and we happened to run into each other checking our mail. And she looked over at me and she wanted to know how I was doing. I'm fine. I don't think you are, she says. Why don't you come over for some coffee? And I think we all have like those internal like biases and preconceived notions about people. And I said, to myself, what do I have in common with a 70-something-year-old white retired principal from Battle Creek, Michigan? But I guess I'll go, right? What else am I doing? And I went over and I walked in, and she had some of the most beautiful Afghans, throws, curtains. She sewed just little like knickknacks and things all around her house. And I asked her, where do you buy your furnishings? And she says, buy. She says, I don't buy these things. I make them. What? You made this and that and this? And she knit, she crocheted, she sewed, she baked, you named it, she did it. And I expressed interest. I said, I would love to learn how to do this. And she gave me a crochet hook and one ball of white red heart yarn. And she said, read this little book, practice with this yarn. Any questions you have, you come knock on my door. And that's how it started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you went into a yarn store by yourself?
Boy, do I. And it's actually the catalyst, or what started at the time was Adela's Crochet Cottage, but is now Lola Bean Yarn Co. I was looking for my local yarn store. And please let me say that the store that I'm talking about is closed, because we have a new shop, and people, you have super sleuths online, and people are like, that has to be the shop she's talking about, and they reached out and they're like, please, people are calling and they're saying I was mean to you. And so the shop I am talking about is now closed, but I walked in with the intentions of buying some yarn. And as soon as I opened the door, the person who was working in the shop looked me up and down and said her bathroom was for customers only. And I turned around and I got in my car and I drove home. It was so obvious that she saw, a plus size Black woman with natural hair. And I think I had a hoodie on that said like, I love New York and Converse and jeans. And, she made all of these assumptions based on those things. And to her, I couldn't possibly be there to purchase anything for crafting because crafters don't look like I do.
And yet you kept going. How did you wind up getting yarn?
Well, I did a lot of ordering online, but I said, I could probably dye yarn myself. And, you see people doing it or showing it. So I'm like, well, if people around me are doing it, maybe I can. And I went on a YouTube University and I watched a couple of videos. I grabbed myself some Kool-Aid packets and some cheap wool that I found. And I dyed yarn and I put it in a crafting group. I'm like, look what I did today. I was so excited. Looking back at that yarn now, I'm like, oh, that was just awful. But I put it in the crafting group and somebody commented, they said, oh my gosh, that yarn is beautiful. How much would you charge for it? And the light bulb, you could probably like see it. Wait, you'll pay me for this. And that was all she wrote. I mean, full speed ahead, equipment, acid dyes instead of Kool-Aid. I mean, I wasted no time, played no games whatsoever. And I just kept going.
You told us that you started under one name and then you rebranded. Why did you rebrand your business?
The birth of my daughter. For a long time, I wasn't very active in terms of like showing like my face and talking about the person behind the brand. And I brought this little girl into a world that was so chaotic. And I said, I want to leave this world a little better than it was when I came into it for her sake. And in order to do that, you got to show up. Mm-hmm. You got to show up. You got to tell your story. You have to let people know what's going on so that they can, in effect, help you to make these changes. So it was definitely for, my kids.
Well, tell us the difference, though. Initially, it was called Adela's
Crochet Cottage.
And then you went to Lola Bean Yarn Company with a very different logo. What was the thinking?
It was, my first logo was very much craft centered, but it could have been a white person behind that brand. It could have been, you wouldn't know who was behind that brand. Whereas my new logo is a caricature of my daughter. So it's a little black baby. And I thought that would be a wonderful way to show her, have something for her as she gets older to see and be proud of, but also for people who look like me and who look like her, who walk into like these different yarn shops to see, wait a minute, there's a black baby, there's a black person, there's somebody black here. Mm-hmm. Maybe not physically, but represented through her yarn. And hopefully it would welcome people and let other people know that Black people, we dye yarn. We're here, we craft.
Did that rebranding have an impact on your business?
Huge impact. First of all, who doesn't love a baby? Like, that was very smart, right? A baby, come on. Babies, they're perfect. But also, I was very intentional because, sometimes it's hard to reach certain people. But with a baby, because everybody loves babies, it's a Black baby. So this is a Black woman. But I mean, I could have easily used like, a Black power fist or something else too. But, I don't want to say trap, because
babies are a little less threatening.
Yes, a little less threatening. And I might be biased, but I think my kid is adorable. Like, she's
gorgeous. Yeah.
Gorgeous.
And tell us, for those who aren't familiar with the industry, you're considered an independent dyer, I believe is the term. What exactly does that mean, and how does the business work?
It means my back is always hurting. My shoulders are sore. What I do is I take natural fibers, wool, alpaca, Angora, and I use different types of dyes. And I add pigment, and people then buy them and make things like, That's not my yarn, but the sweater Gigi has on is hand dyed yarn.
Do I need this change? We can fix it.
I was surprised. I have to say, I was surprised.
Yeah, because most of Gigi's wardrobe, it feels like, is Lola Bean.
Yeah.
We can fix
it.
Don't go anywhere, Gigi. You're up next.
People, they buy it and they then in turn make, all types of creations for their own personal use or for loved ones. So that's what I do every day.
Is it just you? Do you have employees?
I have a Sue Speckler. I call him my husband, the washer of the pans. And for the most part, every now and again, when my kids want to make a couple bucks, they'll come in and help me out. But every skein of yarn that I have ever sold has only been dyed by me and has passed through these hands. Wow. My husband is a great support system. If I need a labeler that day, that's what he is. If I need a pan washer, that's what he is. If I need somebody to sit next to me and tell jokes to keep me, going, throughout the day, that's what he does. And he spends a lot of time with the kids because he works from home and his job isn't as physically demanding as mine. So he'll do that part of it so that I'm able to go into the studio and do my work.
Got it. Gigi, how about you? How did you get into yarn and knitting?
Mine is kind of sad. I call 2012 my storm. And in 2012, I lost a dad suddenly, my mom suddenly, and then my job, my 22 years job, all at the same time. And maybe a year or two prior to that, I taught myself to knit. I had, like Adela, I started out with crochet. I learned to crochet in summer camp as a kid. I could make a chain. I made a few blankets, but it was no big deal. Knitting always seemed very difficult to me because of the material that was created. So I automatically knew that wasn't something for me. But I ran a call center for Verizon and we had yarn. And I was like, what is this? And the little pattern was in the box. And I'm like, this is Greek. So I went on YouTube and figured out the pattern and made my first little holy scarf. And then I was done with it. I'm one of them. If you want me to do something, tell me I can't. And then get out of my way. Right. So fast forward, a friend was making a hat. She was knitting. It was beautiful. And I was like, can you make me one? And she was like, she gave me a list of materials to get, sent me to Michael's. I got my stuff. I ran back. I put it on her desk and she slid it back. And I'm looking at her because she was on a conference call and she writes in a sticky. She said, no, you're going to do this. And I'm like, okay, I can't do that. She said, you said you know how to knit. I do, but I can't do that. So that day she taught me how to knit in a round. I made an entire hat. The only thing she didn't teach me how to do was how to finish it. So I got home and I got to the 9 inches and then with crocheting, you just take the hook out. So I took the needle out and I had a hole in the top of my head. I didn't think that was the way that was supposed to be. So I pulled the thing out. I started all over and I sat at her desk. She came in, I was sitting there like, what am I supposed to do? She was like, oh God, Gay, I forgot to show you how to finish it. So she started me off on it. But when my world fell apart, I turned to knitting. I tell people that I wrapped my heart in yarn and my yarn captured my tears. My yarn didn't have any questions. And I sat up and I knit. And when I discovered, at the same time, I discovered Instagram, I discovered that there was a world, a community out there. And I was just like, wow, it's funny, people to this day that are like, oh my God, Gigi. I said, would you stop? I used to make your patterns. I used to chase behind you. They're like, but you're Gigi. No, I'm just a knitter. So. But
you're not just a knitter. Tell us about being, I guess the term that's usually used is influencer. Is that, do you like that term? Is that what you call it?
I don't. Adela's
what are you then?
Because she always gets on me. I guess I do influence people's purchases, influence their thought processes, but I
think I know you do that, Gigi.
Yeah, but you know what I don't like? I think, to say that somebody's an online influencer, indicates that there's some sort of payment involved with what they're doing, therefore taking away the validity of what they're saying and doing. And I am so not that. I have turned down payment for things that I don't believe in. Right. So I guess I don't like that term for the negative concept of it, but Adela made me realize my influence.
Someone called you a knitfluencer.
Yes, that too.
Influencer. Okay, I like that.
I like that.
I like that. I'll take that. But I think it's my passion. You know, I get so excited to this very day when I do something, when I get a color that I'm really a shade of orange that was quite different from one of the other shades that I love. You know, that's just me. I'm not doing that because somebody is paying me to do it. That's just who I am.
Well, how did it happen? How did you become so influential?
I have no idea. Like I can't say that I set out to do that. One thing I can say that was in my mind's eye, I always I would watch and see people go to these different events that I had no idea existed, and traveling even internationally to go to, and I was like, that would be the perfect job for me. I would love to be paid to travel to all of these places. I love having my camera. I love recording stuff and bring it back to the people that don't have an opportunity to do those things. But when I realized the power, when I realized my influence is the first time that Adela dyed yarn for me. I put out a call. I saw a pattern. I wanted to make it. And I said, I need somebody to make me 3 different shades of orange. And I think Adela was the first one. She said, take that post down because I'm going to do it. We argued about speckles because at the time I wasn't big on speckles, but she was like, okay, I'm going to do this. She did it. And I was like, Adela, you know, how do I pay you? Nope. Only way I'm doing it, if you allow me to dress you, is what her exact words were. I want to dress you. So got the yarn, did a video because it was absolutely beautiful. I made my pattern. I went outside. I took pictures and I posted the pictures and everybody went bananas. Mm-hmm. I'm on her website. I can't find the yarn. Okay. She kind of sort of only made this for me. They were like, Gigi, but she can't. Okay, hold on. Y'all be quiet. Let me go over here and try to beg. Because at this point, you know, Adela is family to me now. But then we didn't really know each other, right? So it was still a business transaction, if you will. And I'm like, guys, easy. Let me go talk to her and see. So we talked and she said, okay, I'm going to do 1 pre-order. I said, okay. 25 pre-orders later, like I was sure she was never going to dye orange again. But what people don't know, and what I don't often say, because I don't want to make Adela feel uncomfortable, but it was in the midst of all that I used to have an Etsy shop and I closed my shop. I used to sell things that I made. And I'm doing something and I hear the cha-ching, which is somebody giving you money and PayPal. And I'm like, who's sending me money? Because I don't have anything for sale. Like I shut my Etsy down. I was in the process of switching everything to, and I looked and it was a lump sum from Adela. Something's wrong with this picture. I got the yarn.
Right.
Why are you giving me money? So I reached out to her and she said, listen, I sat down, I talked to my husband. She was like, you don't understand the amount of money that I made because of you. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, it was the yarn that but if they didn't see you with the yarn, mm-hmm. you don't know how much traffic you drove to me. And it was her that made me realize that I was influencing the sales of orange yarn. Like I was just being me. And I'm still just being me, not realizing that I'm driving money. Adela was just, and again, I say, right now, people probably feel like, oh, it's you two. Y'all love each other. But this is prior to the love affair. This is prior to us meeting. This was just Adela being a upfront business person, right? And that's when I realized that there could be something in this. Now, was I confidently going to companies and saying, listen, you need to dye some orange and give it to me? No, I wasn't, because I didn't feel confident in that. Right. I just was doing what I do. The majority of the yarn that I had, if it's not from Adela, I bought it. right? But then that quickly shifted. Companies quickly was like, oh, we need to put our yarn in Gigi's hand, right? So, I can't say that it was something that I actively pursued. It just kind of happened. And I give Adela the credit for that because she was the first one to say, listen, she didn't send me $10. Like she sent me money. I'm like, wait, hold on. What is happening? Right. So again, you don't see many people that look like me doing this. You don't see many people, that
How many followers do you have?
Now I'm close to 57,000.
That's on Instagram?
That's Instagram. Yeah. So,
and
I didn't count the others.
Is there anybody else in the industry in that neighborhood?
Well, individually, just like a singular person like me, I don't know. I don't say that I check, but I will say I compare myself to, I look at those that I aspired to be. And I look now and I'm like, wow, I passed them by leaps and bounds, and I thought they were the thing. But I think the difference between me and those that I aspire to be is something that you said in the title. It started out with the knitting, but it's more me than it is anything else. So you get my orange passion about whatever I'm thinking about, feeling about, so I think where I will take the term influencer is I like to influence thoughts, right? On purpose. So it has kind of shifted a little bit to that.
Can I interject?
Please.
I think that what Gigi didn't say is the reason why she has the influence that she has, because you see other influencers out there. Mm-hmm. They're selling you shoes, they're selling you toilet paper, they are selling you all types of things. Gigi is very intentional, mm-hmm. and she is very careful with what she shares with her audience because she respects them, she respects their dollar, and she's not trying to just sell them something quickly to make a buck. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what sets her apart from a lot of the other influencers that you see out there, on social media platforms. She's intentional.
I would also add that she is very genuine as just a human being and shares her emotions and her feelings about things in a way that is so refreshing and genuine. And you get that through the screen, you get that through the newsletters, the blogs, the posts, and all of the ways that she touches our industry. You get that from her. And I always say to her sometimes when she, posts a picture angry or laughing or whatever, I'm like, you give a lot of yourself to us, to people who may not necessarily be deserving of it, but, thank you for that.
So let me ask you this, Gigi. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I sense that you may have been at times a little conflicted about your role, especially in terms of whether you should get paid for what you do. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you've thought that through?
I don't know that it was confliction more so than it was a low self-esteem, a lack of belief in self, basically not feeling like I deserved it, right? You see what Adela and Felicia did, and they often do when they see my little insecure Gigi pop her head up, they push her aside and they step in and remind me, right? Because I think people, I always say to them, why do people act this way? It's just me. I got to learn to take my flowers. I have to learn to appreciate. There's a lot of times
she says that to us
all the time. Stay in
their finger wagging kind of way. I don't receive it that way. Yeah. I can't tell you the number of times I have received a FaceTime with, eyes really close to the screen. What did I tell you? I'm like, okay, I get it.
and they're right. And there's been times when I did feel like, I'll be like, okay, Adela, I'm going to tell them that they're going to have to pay me and blah, blah, blah. And I will lowball myself And the people that's offering me money will say, no, Gigi, we think you deserve this. We're offering you this. I'll be like, Adela, they said they're going to pay me. You know,
Take it all.
Because I'm still that insecure little girl, you know, that was always told I wasn't good enough. I wasn't pretty enough. And she still exists in me. So yes, I am getting paid. Yes, you know, I get paid to speak in person, virtually, like all of that is my reality now. But I still am always shocked. I'll be like, Adela. She'd be like, what? I'll be like, and she'd be like, why are you shocked?
She'd be so excited. And sometimes I have to remember, like, you see how she talks about that little girl inside. I have to remember that little girl because to me, I'm like, okay, so they see what I've seen.
Exactly.
So she calls me, she's like, oh, Adela, you don't know such and such, and they're going to pay me. And I'm like, they should. You know, and then I have to remember, you know, that's that little girl inside of her that, you know, and you know, we will talk about it and I express like the joy and the happiness, but on the inside, I'm like, I knew it all along.
All right, Felicia, your turn. I'm eager to hear how you got into this business, but let's start. You had a couple of previous lives.
Yes, I have lived a few lives. I'm the artist formerly known as a couple times. But
what were your first lives?
So, I mean, I learned how to knit as a little girl. And I, at the time, was blessed enough to be old enough to remember both of my great grandmothers. And one taught me how to knit and one taught me how to crochet. And at 6 or 7, whenever it was punishment as far as I was concerned, because that meant I had to sit down and shut up and, you know, not do whatever it was I wanted to do. And so I did it and I learned, and it like lived in some little spot in the back of my head. And over the years, you know, as I grew up, I periodically would pick it up. You know, it's kind of, that's why I always tell people it's a muscle memory. Like I would go back to it and not really understand why I was drawn to this yarn and the crochet hook or this yarn and the needles. So I tell people now when they meet me, I'm like, you know, when I was a little girl, I didn't say I wanted to grow up and own a yarn shop. I said I wanted to grow up and be a doctor. And that was what I did. You know, I grew up, I was a podiatrist. I am a podiatrist. I practiced for 10 years between Buffalo, New York, and the DC, Maryland area before I moved back to New York City, probably 16, almost 17 years ago now. And even then, I was still crocheting and I was still knitting, mostly knitting. I used to tell people I know how to provisionally cast on crochet to get to my knitting. That was what it used to be. Now I actually enjoy knitting much more. But I would knit. I was a surgeon, so I did surgery, and knitting I found helped me keep my dexterity up. So when I wasn't knitting, when I wasn't doing surgery, and after I started having kids and shifted my career from being a full-time doctor to being a full-time stay-at-home mom, when I moved back here to New York, knitting, crafting became a big part of my daily living. When I was in Maryland, I met what I lovingly call her one of my yarn garden tools, one of my best friends, Beverly, and her cousin, Nikki. And I feel like as soon as you find another person who knits or crochets or crafts like you suddenly have a coven, like it's real, like you become this little force. And we did everything. Like we went to the festivals, we traveled everywhere we went, we found a yarn shop with everybody, every yarn person, the 3 of us on this screen and everybody else in the chat will tell you after you book your ticket in your hotel, you figure out where the closest yarn shop is. So we did all of that. And, you know, I moved here to New York, raised my 3 kids. When my oldest went to middle school, I decided that it was time for me to go back to work, but I didn't want to get back into medicine and private practice because I knew the time that it takes, and it's all consuming. Like I loved my practice, not dissimilar to the way that I love my yarn shop and the people. It's the people that really make it for me, right? So I decided that I still wanted to be accessible for my kids in a way that I knew I couldn't if I was in private practice. So I volunteered. I was, you know, super PTA mom and did that whole thing. And from that, met 2 other moms who worked for a nonprofit called Keep a Child Alive, which was Alicia Keys's nonprofit at the time. And as all of our children were going to middle school, I was like, okay, it's time for me do some stuff I get paid for, like done volunteering. That was nice. I still do it, but not that same way. And ended up working at Keep a Child Alive for 7 years. By the time I started part-time, and this will speak to like knowing your worth and things like that. It's not something that you're born with. You kind of learn about that. I started part-time and I was like, I'm not going to do it for free. You have to pay me something. You don't have to pay me like I'm a surgeon, but you need to pay me something. You treat people differently who you pay. And they respected that as two women, mothers, they said, absolutely. They found the money. I started part-time. I started asking questions, business type questions. How much money does your board make you? And, why do you do this? And, thinking about these different things. And before I knew it, I had talked myself or questioned myself into a full-time offer of work from them for a job that I did not want and was not looking for, but was passionate about, right? So it's passionate about it as I am about most things that I do. So, but interestingly enough, before I agreed to do full-time, I remember talking to my husband saying, I think I'm going to go in and I'm going to ask for this money. And he was just like, okay, let me know how that goes. So I went in and I had a whole pitch for like these two women, the president, vice president, the HR person. And I was like, look, you're not asking me to do less work. You're asking me to take on more work. And, I'm fine with that. I'm not saying I can't handle it, but here are the ground rules. Like if I wanted to be working full time and taking time away from my family and my kids, I would be back practicing medicine. So you should understand that you will get more than 40 hours a week from me if I'm allowed to free flow out of here. Like if my kids are sick, I'm at home. When my kids are on vacation, I'm at home. And in the summertime, when they're off, I take 2, sometimes 3 weeks off because my kids are at home. And that was the ground rules, like tell them, give me my assignment. I'm going to handle it. And I'm going to do what I'm going to need to do. And these were 3 women I was sitting there talking to. And it was so funny because 2 of them were like, okay. The other one, who was a little younger than us, was very much kind of put off by the fact that I was so upfront and direct at the fact that these are my requirements, right? Like I want to do this. That I'm passionate. You wouldn't be asking me to be here 40 hours a week if I wasn't. But these are my own personal ground rules in order to be able to do it. They say yes to the money. They say yes to my ground rules. And 7 years later, I stopped working there and was associate director of development. Had developed a program where I took high net worth. We took high net worth donors to South Africa and India to show them our programs and talk to them about why we did what we did and why they should join us. And I liked development. I enjoyed that. And the whole time knitting, I remember traveling to Uganda with the group. And those who know, I have my signature knitting needles in my carry-on bag flying internationally. And I knitting all along the way. We stopped and we had to go through security again. And they wanted to take my needles.
What? Yeah.
Right. I was like,
Right.
You can take my needles? I got out of the States with these things. What do you mean? I flew here with these. They were like, no, it must have been 6 a.m. in the morning in like Amsterdam or wherever we were. I was like, they were like, if you don't want us to take them, you have to go and check them. I left out the door, went back downstairs, checked my carry-on bag, put whatever I wanted in my purse. And so now somebody's saying, oh no, in the thing. And the executive director of the program was there with these people. We're trying to be all professional and everything. And he was absolutely terrified because as they were going through the security, I still had not joined them from going to check my needles in. And I was trying to call him and they were trying to call me, but of course our phones didn't work because we were in international territory now and we hadn't switched over. So by the time I get to the gate, I'm there and they're coming by and one of the people that was traveling with us saw us and burst out laughing. And I said, what's wrong? She was just like, you don't understand. Your boss was losing his mind at Fridays because he was just like, she's got 3 kids. I can't leave her here. I cannot get on the plane and keep going to Africa and she's not with us. Why didn't you just leave the knit needles? And I was just, because that was not happening. It just was not. Clearly, it didn't happen. Clearly he just. So, and I went to Africa. What did we do? We found yarn. That's what we do. So, so that was like my experience. And when I left Keep a Child Alive, I did a little stint in consulting as a development person for small nonprofits that knew they needed help, but didn't have money for a full-time development person. So I was just like development in a box. I could show up, I could run events, I know how to help you make money, and I can write it all down for you and you're good. And I did that, but I didn't do it for long because it kind of felt like speed dating. And that really I really wasn't there long enough to like really build a relationship. It was fun while it lasted, but depending on who initiated the relationship, they would kind of peter out. Over the course of that time, by the time I ended up finished consulting, my mom had this health issue where she discovered she had vascular issues. She had to come to New York City and have surgery. She stayed with us for some period of time and ended up on dialysis. And, so that was a whole new world for everybody in the whole family. She did eventually go back to Buffalo, which is where we're from. And she had gotten a kidney transplant. She had gotten a kidney transplant in early of 2015. And we were thrilled that she finally, after 2-3 years and going through all the struggle, had done that. And she was doing really well. And then she ended up not doing so well for a weekend. And it had gotten to that point where she had gone to the hospital so many different times. She didn't call me every single time she was in the hospital. My sister and family were all there. And she called me. They eventually was like, yeah, she's been in the hospital overnight. And of course, as a doctor of the family, usually I'm the last one they want to know, because I want to come in and say, I'm sorry, we're changing this whole thing is just not, this doesn't work for me. We're changing all of this. That was always my threat in medical school. My mom was a smoker at one point, and I was like, I'm going to put patches in places. You're not even going to understand why you don't want to smoke, because you're not going to be able to reach it. You're not going to know where I put it. It's going to be square in the middle of your back and you have no idea. That was just it. So I was like the boogeyman at the hospital, like, don't call her, whatever you want to do. And so they eventually was like, Mom was in, and she was like, it's no big deal. I'm just having some stomach issues. Long story short, my mom went in for what should have been an uncomplicated procedure, and it was complicated, and she never woke up. So like Gigi, my knitting was kind of held me together during that grieving period, which was and continues to be difficult. It comes in waves. The waves are not as frequent as they used to be, but they used to be pretty bad. And I used to say to people, like, I would get up in the morning, I would get my kids ready for school, and I would get them out the door, and then I would get on the couch and I would knit and cry and watch TV and maybe take a nap. And I did that for a while. And my two girlfriends, Beverly and Nikki, who were my knitting girls, were like, you gotta get up off that couch and you've gotta do something. Like, your mom would not want you sitting here like this. And I knew they were right. And so one of my favorite local yarn shops was closing unexpectedly. For those in Brooklyn who know, La Casita was closest to me here in Capitol Hill, and they were closing. I remember being on summer vacation and calling them up and saying, like, what do you mean? Like, it was like this email, what do you mean you're closing? And they were like, somebody bought the building, so we're out. Well, one of my girlfriends saw that the same email. She didn't call the store. She calls me and is like, you need to call them and tell them you're going to buy that yarn shop. Yes, you need that yarn shop. And I was just like, well, it's not like that. It's not like they can't keep it. It's just not going to be a yarn shop. But the seed was planted. Like, maybe you should open a yarn shop. I had that inclination when I first moved to New York. There was a small yarn shop around the corner from me. Actually, it's catty corner to where my store is now. It used to be. And I can remember going there, which was also owned by a West Indian woman of color. And I was like, I'd like to open a yarn shop, but again, kids were young, moving around, really wasn't the time to do it. But I can remember speaking to a mom who our sons played, my oldest son and her son played soccer. And she said to me one day, I remember us having a conversation like what our dream job was and what that entailed. And she said, you described a place that I don't even know how to knit, but I would want to go to that place. Like, that's what you should be doing. Like, that's what you should open. And so she and I, for a minute, tried to do it together. She was going to do like a baking kind of DIY thing, and I was going to run the yarn shop. Eventually she dropped out. She wasn't able to stay with it, and I stuck with it. And that's what eventually turned into Strengthening Studio. Like, it's not far from my home, and has, the feeling I wanted it was for it to feel like an extension of my living room, of my kitchen. And when you came in, you were grab a plate, like have a seat. Like, at the shop, it's, you have to touch everything when you come in, like that's the rule. I intentionally didn't call it Strengthening Studio Yarn Shop because I wanted it to be a space where all types of creatives would come in. I didn't want you to feel like you had to come in and think that I was an expert on everything, because I certainly was not. But you should feel comfortable coming in. And if you wanted something and we didn't have it, I was happy to get it for you and get an expert to help you with that. And over the almost 5 years, it'll be 5 years in June 17th, that we've been open, this incredible, loving, crazy community has developed at this shop that is a family in so many ways, the family you choose, and we all talk about that so many different ways, how we support each other, and the various different people that used to sit at my table, I should say, before COVID, that used to sit around my table as a cross section of the world, like doctors, lawyers, judges, all, you name it, all kinds of men, women, children, everybody at the table.
Felicia, if I understand correctly, that didn't just happen. That was kind of a deliberate strategy on your part to involve the community and pull people in with different kinds of events that
Absolutely.
yard shops traditionally haven't done. Give us a taste of that. What did you do?
Yeah, like we have a backyard at my shop, which also makes us unique. And because of that, I wanted it to really build a space that, like I remember the spot in my neighborhood when I was supposed to be coming home for school and I knew nobody was home. It was okay for me to go there because it was safe. I wanted to be that spot in our neighborhood. And where my shop is in Park Slope is tons of kids. If it's not 3 kids, it's 2 dogs. Like it's just tons of space and that type of community. And we build that. So we have pop-up shows. We had a pop-up cafe in the backyard last year. We do installations. We invite other artists to come in, not even just fiber artists, but artists to come in and do things in our shop. I've hosted writing workshops. We're an organization that gave workshops, rented out space, and had their classes there weekly, almost like 5 out of 6 days out of the week. They were coming to the shop. And so many of those people who were not knitters, but were writers, have come back and said, I started knitting because this place just emotes so much energy and good vibes that I just felt like I needed to learn how to knit. There was a girl, she had to defend her dissertation, and she was like, I want to do it in your backyard. Like she literally brought her entire class, her professor, her family to sit in the backyard of my yarn shop to defend her dissertation. So it just feels really good to reserve that space in people's hearts and their lives as a yarn shop and be able to do that.
That's amazing. All right. So we have just heard 3 really moving stories from 3 smart, delightful, passionate women, which leads to the obvious question, which is, why is there a culture war in the yarn industry right now? And I'm hoping you can help me get my head around this a little bit. At some points, I'm thinking, yeah, in the yarn business, knitting, what?
I'll start.
How? Why? Well, here, please try to explain. Is it something different about your industry, or is it? Of course, there's a cultural issue there because that's what's going on in the country, and why wouldn't there be?
I always say that. I was like, the yarn industry is a cross section of the world, so it is unrealistic to think that the issues of the world would not find their way into the yarn industry, right? Differences frighten people. People who are different, things that are different make people uncomfortable. I've experienced it in good and bad ways because I'm one of the few Black-owned yarn shops. I'm the only one in the city of New York, and only a few of us in the country, right? And I think so many people come in making assumptions, like Adela says, when people walk into the shop, they assume my employees are the owners. We went through that for a number of different years. And, it used to be so that my employees would be so offended on my behalf. And I was just like, I lived a life where I exist in that world all the time. Like, it couldn't be you. You couldn't be the doctor. You must be the nurse. You couldn't be the owner. You're Black. Like, you couldn't live in Park Slope. You're Black. It's all of those assumptions that people make. So I think that is part of what, the chickens, what they say, the chickens coming home to roost. I think that's some of that is embedded in that.
I agree. There's just like she said, it's just a very tiny intersection of the world. There's assumptions that are made about Black people that people truly in their heart of hearts feel like is real, right? So I would explain situations that happened to me in yarn stores, and my following would always say the same exact thing. They didn't know it was you, Gigi. What does that mean? I don't get that, right? They saw a Black person and they instantly felt, why are you in my yarn shop? Like, one, you can't afford the yarn. They're assuming, right? You can't knit. Black people don't knit. There's just.
Was that true at one time?
And I don't know that it was ever true, but something that Adela said, I can tell you is 100% true, is because as a Black person, you expect rejection. We protect ourselves. So those that were in the industry, you didn't know they were in the industry because all you saw was the yarn or whatever they were making. They never did a picture of their hands or themselves for the fear of the backlash. Because you're Black, you're not supposed to be here. So many people do it. Like I have a board on Pinterest about, knitting in Black history. Like you can go back and find people knitting, Black people knitting, but there was just this assumption that, hand-dyed yarn was more expensive. Black people are poor, they can't afford it. And apparently our hands don't work like everybody else because we can't possibly knit. Like, that's just not a thing. Like, I even had a situation where older woman, they were complimenting me on something I had on. And I said, thank you. And they said, where'd you get it from? And I said, I made it. It was an older woman and her daughter. And when I say an older woman, like the woman could have been my auntie or, my elder. And the lady put her hands on me and said, no, this. And I said, yes, I made it. She said, that looks like it's knit. It is. I made it. She was like, oh, because I didn't think you people, and her daughter pulled her away. Right. And the concierge was like, because I used to travel for work. So I was in that particular hotel probably 2 months. And as a lady was walking, and she made them things on her feet because I seen her do it, and he was like mortified. He was a white man. And he was like, he was looking at me and I said, did that just happen? He said, it did. I said, did she just you people me? He said, she did. And I'm so sorry. He said, I didn't know what to say. I tried to break it up, but you have the people that feel that way. And for whatever reasons, they keep it to themselves, right? But let something happen. And like Adela and I often say, the great divide happens. So now, right, I'm going to stand up for my side of the whatever. And we stop being people, makers, crafters, because that's what we all have in common, right? And now it becomes the issue of race. And then it just gets ugly. But I think it's always been there.
It's so funny. I did exactly what Gigi said. When I first opened my shop, it was only pictures of the shop. It was only pictures of the yarn. I had no pictures of myself. And it was intentional, but not for the reasons that I thought initially, but maybe subconsciously it was. And it was a white woman that says, I never see you in any pictures of your shop. I was like, yeah, I'm not important. Like people want to buy the yarn. She was like, yeah, no, but you're kind of cute. You should be in the pictures. And, we did this thing where it was like, it became, like you say, the super sleuths. There was something that happened in my backyard. There was a documentary and there was a photograph taken and we posted it and we were in the photograph and people literally went through, was like, I know that person. I know that person. I don't know her. Right. She's the owner of the shop. And that was kind of like my outing.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Adela, let me ask you, there's, I'm trying to figure out how to get at this. I used the term culture war before, and somebody in the comments raised a question about that. And maybe war isn't the right word, but there's certainly been back and forth and friction, and people have had to rebrand. People have closed shops. Bloggers have shut down their blogging. A lot of it's been political. It's kind of come in waves. There was a period, I guess, maybe it was 2016. I know you guys don't know what we're talking about. There was a cultural appropriation issue that was raised by a blogger who took a trip to India.
19.
Okay. So there was a wave then. There was another wave after the murder of George Floyd. And my understanding is that each of those waves has presented a complicated situation for each of you, in the sense that to some extent, people have been looking for diversity in the yarn industry, and people have found you in part because of that. And yet there's also obviously the other unfortunate side of it. And I wonder how you've dealt with that, Adela.
I mean, it's unfortunate that I call them the Black waves. When something traumatic happens within the Black community and you have this like rush of people who want to genuinely support you, and then those who want to exploit you so that they look and seem inclusive and diverse.
Which puts you in the position of trying to figure out who's genuine and who's not.
I've been in situations where, a shop owner has reached out to me because they want to carry my yarn, and they'll say things like, "Oh, attached, you'll see a donation I've made to the NAACP." These are like real situations that I have it's difficult. It is really difficult to maneuver that. It's painful. I think when I say difficult, people just think like from like a business standpoint, but from a personal standpoint, it is extremely painful to break your back to make a product that you feel is, superior, and to send it out to people who will then sell it, but they don't care about the person who's doing all of this work. So ultimately, where that has put me today is I no longer wholesale.
Well, let's step back there for a second. There's been a more recent incident, which remarkably was triggered by
my mouth.
Vogue knitting. That's not what I was going to say. I was going to say it was triggered in part by Vogue knitting putting Michelle Obama on the cover of its issue.
Well, that was the trigger. But that's not even the main point. The focus of that was basically the exploitation of Black women and people not standing up for supporting and protecting Black women.
And believing
was the bigger conversation that came from that. And because of that whole situation and the silence that was deafening from so many people who were making money off of my hard work and my product. If you're going to carry products from Lola Bean Yarn Co. And other Black makers within this industry, and you see that Black women are coming under attack, I'm going to need you to stand up and support Black women. You can't make money off of us because, you might be placing in wholesale order, but I can sell that retail in my shop. I can give myself a raise and make all the money, right? But this is a system to where we help each other. You're a yarn shop. I give you yarn. I sell you yarn that we keep each other afloat, right? Support one another. But when it comes to Black makers in this industry, we are treated differently still, and we experience a lot of unfairness. And when those situations and things happen, when those things arise, you have to speak up. And if you're not going to speak up, and if you're not going to defend these makers that you're carrying and making money off of, then you don't deserve those products. So I took all of my product back.
But you had been selling wholesale to shops around the world. And you closed down all of those sales?
And I have a queue where people will give me half of the money up front so that I can secure their base. And once they come up on my schedule, I dye it, they send me the rest of the money, and then I ship out their yarn. I gave it back $40,000, $50,000 in 3 days in deposits. Peace of mind is priceless.
Amen.
And me giving that money back was absolutely just the peace that I got from that and the heaviness that started to lift. I'd do it all over again if I had to. because what I want to do now moving forward is I want to, not that I wasn't thoroughly vetting, but I don't think I was doing enough.
Vetting
And
the people you were selling to?
Yes. I want to see where you stand. I want to ask you hard questions. I want to know that if, Black makers in this community are being mistreated or they're not getting the same opportunities and offers that white makers are getting, I want to make sure you're going to say something. I want to make sure that you are doing everything you can to help, because black makers in this community aren't asking for more than anybody. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. They think we want more. We want more than you. No, we want the same. Mm-hmm. Right? So
what aren't you getting that others do get?
Oh my goodness. We can talk about opportunities at events, yarn events, mm-hmm. where, I've gone to events where I didn't see a single Black vendor. And they're there, right? So you don't get those opportunities. When you talk about influencers Black influencers that don't get paid the same as white influencers, where they'll give
Gigi,
they'll give a white influencer, $1,000 for a post, and then they want to give the Black influencer, a sample. Here's a free sample, things like that. Like there are so many different ways that we are mistreated, charging us for things that, our white counterparts are not charged for, because we might be newer, right? Because you've never allowed us in. Now you're allowing us in, but then you're taking advantage of us as we're coming through the door. Mm-hmm. So I need to make sure that the people that I am aligning myself with are going to help me level the playing field. And if you're not going to help me level the playing field, that's fine. But please do not look for Lola Bean Yarn Co. yarn to be in your shops, to be at your event.
Gigi, can you tell us how you think about that? Because it seems like there are two contradictory things happening there. During the Black waves that Adela refers to, I think I know from talking to you that you got lots more followers as part of that, people looking to follow someone that would, whose diversity would rub off on them in a positive way. At the same time, it sounds as if you felt that you haven't been treated the same way other influencers have been treated. How do you process that contradiction?
Listen, Adela calls it a wave. There was some time we said, like this last time, we said it was a tsunami. Right? Because you would just get blown away by the number of new followers, which is fine, welcome. But I always felt like I had to stand at my virtual door and say, the only color I have for you is orange. Don't follow me because I'm Black. That's not fair. Okay. And that it went from that to everybody wanted. Gigi, can you speak? At that point, I had never spoken anywhere. Speak about what? What are you talking about? Can you do this? Can you do that? Gigi, we want, and I didn't even know these people. Adela can tell you. I'd be like, Adela, who is this? You ever heard of this? Felicia, what's this yarn? I don't even know these people. And, I would go, like Adela said, vet. I'll go on their page, and the only thing Black on the screen was the ink. I'm like, yeah, no, thank you. I'm not your token Black knitter, right? So, because I know, right, at that point, I was very solid in the fact that my followers pay attention. So if I go do something with company XYZ, now my followers are going with me, right? Now, here you go. You ain't really fond of Black people, really, but you need somebody to make you look like you are, right? So then now I feel responsible if somebody went and they're dealing with Adela on my behalf, and Adela is trash, right? So that's why when Adela said, I'm very mother henish, I will fight you over my audience. Please don't give me no product, and you only got 2 because you sold out, because now they coming after me. Because Gigi, the website, it's not, listen, right? So I'm very protective. But on that same note, right, where I know for a fact that others influencers have been paid. Oh, Gigi, we can send you some free yarn. I'm like, do you know Adela COVID? I don't never need yarn the rest of my life.
Ever.
whatever color, what base, what quantity, like miss me with the free. If you want me, you're gonna have to pay for me. Right. And I confidently say that now because not because I feel like I'm all of this, but I know you would pay my white counterpart and you wouldn't even dare ask them without already having money in your pocket. Mm-hmm. Right. So I get a lot of emails. Gigi, we'll pay you, $50 and we want to post in your feed. We want a story. Can you write a blog? What? No, thank you. No, thank you. I should charge you for even reading this email. No, thank you. Right? Because I know the power of my audience. So is there a difference? And then, everybody, me and Adela and Felicia, you have three of us here. We tell the same story. We stand up for the same things, but we all have a different voice, right? And we're going to present it differently, right? I will lay you to rest, and I have not raised my voice. I haven't used one colorful adjective, but as my daughter would say, I will get you two and together very quickly, right? So I am, people tend to say, oh, they want to listen to Gigi because Gigi's nice. You ain't listening then. Because just because I didn't raise my voice, don't mean that I didn't put you back in your place quickly. Like Shelby and Adela will tell you, you don't want to meet Shelby's mother. You don't. Leave her alone. Let her stay where she is. So, clearly, we have all seen the differences in how we're treated. And that's why when we do things on our own, right? When I met Felicia and I met Adela, again, the love affairs with the three of us had not started. But the first thing I said to Felicia, I don't know if you know Adela Colvin, but you need to meet her. Yeah. I said to Adela, I don't know that this Black woman in Brooklyn got a shop, but we need to get.
That's the Black doctor, right? She a Black doctor. Right. Call me when you get there.
Right. So it's, in one space, we said we want to be diverse and we want to be included and don't block us out. But you want to block us out? We could do things together ourselves, right? Yeah. We have amassed a following on our own, but we're not those people. Yeah. We love people. We love makers, whatever shape, form, or fashion you come in, but we still get, and it's getting better, but it takes, like, how many times do we have to climb uphill, icy hill on skates every time to make people see? Stop, so.
The first time we all met was at Adela's first trunk show at my shop. Mm-hmm. And we were like, it's going to be 3 days long and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because a woman who worked for me, and she was just like, I don't think you understand like that this is like very special, like that this is even happening. And I'm like, it's yarn. They were like, no, like you got a Black dyer, a Black influencer, and a Black yarn shop owner. Like, that doesn't.
We really weren't thinking that way.
We had no idea, and we had no yarn by the end of the day. Like by midday, we were like, "Well, I guess we just dancing tomorrow. We're gonna dress up and perform."
Yeah, we're gonna. As soon as they come in the door, we was gonna like, I was like, because I said
it was like a family reunion. The backyard was packed for 3 days. People were driving from 2 hours away to get there. It was just beautiful. Like it was really.
They drove for 2 days, and you didn't have any yarn for them.
She made special yarn. It sold out the first, like before the end of the first day, it was gone. I didn't even get some of the special dyed yarn. I didn't even get any. I didn't even get to put it aside. We were putting it on the wall, and people were walking in and taking it out of our hands.
Snatching it out of our hands. Like I went to Adela. I was like, "Where's the bag?" She was like, "Bag of what?" I said,
"Bag of what?" It was gone.
She said, I said, "Wait, no, but it's only been 3 hours. Like we got the rest of today, tomorrow."
Games of yarn.
Gone. So. I guess my point in sharing that is we're powerful on our own. Like we've figured that out, but we shouldn't have to be on our own, right? We shouldn't have to be separate in an industry that's for makers. It doesn't say you got to be a certain race, creed, financial background in order to knit. It's just knitters, and we shouldn't have to be not showing our pictures. And that's why my feed, people that don't know me, they probably think like she full of herself. Nope. I need you to know this is a Black corner of the orange world. I need you to be clear. Yep. No confusion.
I promised to get you guys out of here in an hour. Can you stick with me a couple more minutes?
No, you're fine.
Good.
Okay,
Yes.
good. I'm really enjoying this, and I have a feeling our listeners are too. And there are a couple of things that I'd really like to get to. One of them is this, as each of you know, I know absolutely nothing about yarn or the knitting industry. What I do know, I've learned from the three of you. But I talk to business people, entrepreneurs, which you all are, all the time. And one of the common themes I've often heard, especially in certain businesses, is that there are a lot of people who go into business because they have a passion, and especially if it's an artistic passion, they're really good at doing certain things. They create beautiful objects or whatever it is. They're great at that. They sometimes struggle with the business side of it. And in getting to know the three of you, I have the sense that each of you has incredible potential to build the businesses that you are building. And I'm not sure you're nearly as far along as you could or possibly should be. And I'm wondering, I hope I'm not offending you by saying that, but I'm curious how you think about it. Adela, let me start with you. I know I talked to you over a year ago, and you were all sold out for months and months to come, and you still are. Why haven't you hired employees? Why aren't you making more yarn? What do you feel? Maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way, but do you feel something is holding you back from doing that?
Stand for is worth more than what you sell. I heard that the other day, and I thought about it. And I think I'm a risk for some people, right? Because I very much say what I want, when I want, how I want. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's gotten me in hot water, I've gotten a few phone calls from my mother after certain social media posts. But the bigger you are, I don't want to, the expression, no people, no problems. When you know people, you know problems. Mm-hmm. The bigger you get, one, it doesn't seem as personal to me. And I really think that a lot of people who support Lola Bean Yarn Co. Do I dye nice yarn? Yeah, the people say I do. Okay. But I think they're here for me. Mm-hmm. They are here for what I stand for. They're here for the glimpses of my family. They're here to see a small business owner who has the same struggles that they do, the same issues that they do. That piece of that is what keeps people supporting me, not necessarily just the yarn. And I struggle with losing that. I don't want to get so big that I lose that. That's one thing. And then from like the purely business side of it, COVID, COVID happened, and not that it hurt me in any way, because that was probably my best year ever when COVID hit. But my family was living in what is now my studio. That was our home. So I was working with my family there. I didn't want to start bringing people in because my kids. And then, somebody comes to work for Lola Bean Yarn Co. And then when they leave, they're going out maskless to the club at night with their friends. There were just too many risks and unknowns. And I wasn't comfortable with taking those chances. We've now separated the studio. We now have, the new house where we live, and I work over there by myself. So I'm.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
All right, we lost Adela. Hopefully, Adela, we lost you for a moment there.
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay.
Okay. I ultimately, I do want to grow, but I want to grow at a pace that works for me, that I am comfortable with, that is safe. And believe it or not, I'm not braggadocious. I try my hardest to stay humble. I like to help people. I like to spread money around that I make, but I think a lot of people would be very surprised if they saw the numbers now and what I do behind the scenes. Like people say, don't you want to grow? Don't you want to grow? And they have no idea how I am growing. Mm-hmm. But that's not for everybody to see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hear what you're saying. I have a good friend who I worked with at Inc. magazine who wrote a book called Small Giants, which is about businesses, in his words, Bo Burlingham, that choose to be great instead of big. But a lot of those businesses, it's not that they don't want to grow, they just want to grow on their own terms, which is kind of what I'm hearing from you.
That's what I want.
And it seems obvious to me that you have the ability to do that if that's what you choose. Gigi, we've talked a little bit about what's holding you back and some of the issues and the way you are treated as opposed to other influencers. You do work a day job. Is it your goal to be able to stop working that day job and be able to do
my dream job, right? Yes, and it's like a comfort thing for me now, because if I look at the dollars, Adela and Felicia can tell you, I was shocked when I did my taxes last year, because my tax lady was like, chick, this is more than a side thing here. What is happening, right? So because it comes in drips and drabs, it's not I get paid every week. You get the security of working, right? And in an environment like this, I might get lump sums here and there, right? So it's that security blanket, right?
You had big plans for 2020 before COVID hit. You were
2020
traveling the world and
like bananas. Like I had, and the good part about my day job, although yes, I do have a traditional 9 to 5. I work for a former boss. Like he was vice president at Verizon while I was there. And as much as I am one of his biggest fans, it's reciprocal, right? So when I was like, Bob, I know I only get X amount of weeks for vacation. However, I'm supposed to be on a plane pretty much every month from February to October. He was like, do they have Wi-Fi where you're going? I said, yeah. He said, take your laptop with you. I said, I swear I love you. So it's like, there's really no big rush to get out of this job because I can do it in my sleep. I was raised in the business in New Jersey, Bell Atlantic, Verizon, and I'm still working for them indirectly. So the convenience is there, but it's a matter of comfort for me, right? And I have so many people that are pushing and pulling and tugging, like, I can help you. One of which is a dear friend of yours, Laura from Jimmy Bean. She tell me all the time, all you got to do is tell me how much money you want to make, Gigi, and we'll do it. I was like, just like that? Yes, just like that. So, the potential is there. And something that you said, again, the potential for the three of us to be bigger than what we are. Again, you have that culture difference, right? It is assumed that white people go into business and are automatically successful. Right. And it's the opposite, right? So
I know a lot of unsuccessful white business owners.
No, yes, I agree there, but the assumption
and they do it again, and they do it,
and because they grow up thinking that I should have my own business. They grow up thinking I should have my own home. And if that's not something you grew up around, it's something that you saw, you can't see yourself there. You hear the term often, representation matters, right? So, my logo is probably when I really exploded because other Black people could see themselves knitting. People would stop me if I had a shirt on or if I was carrying one of my bags. Where did you get that from? And I'm like, it's mine. No. Where'd you buy it? No, on my website. Because I've never seen Black people knitting. And I'm like, where were you looking? So there's just those expectations that still are very powerful in our minds, right? Yes, you see more people in business and more people being successful and more people making a lot more money and doing risky things. But still, even that, the stairs that we got to climb to get there, where somebody else, oh, sure, come on in. We'll do whatever you want to do. What, you need money? You need a fund, a grant? Here. Us, we got to fill out a dissertation and have it, notarized and sealed, and God kiss it. And did he kiss it on a Tuesday or a Wednesday? Because if it was Tuesday, then we can't take this. So there's so many different hoops as a Black person that we have to go through. Sometimes we're just like, it ain't worth it.
I also think that for a long time, when you talk about racism and white supremacy being embedded and ingrained in the very fabric of this country, the society, the world, that for so long, Black people were raised to be model employees. White people were raised to be the owners and the bosses.
Tell it.
And we're now breaking free from that. We're breaking free from those stereotypes. And people will see you, and that's why when they go to Felicia's shop, she's not the owner. The white girl who she hired is. Mm-hmm. I've had people come to a fiber festival and literally push me out of my own booth to talk to the two white girls I had working in my booth, because obviously they're the dyers and the owners, not the Black girl they just pushed out of the way. Mm-hmm. So I think that I get that question that you asked, like, you could be so much bigger. You could be, as a Black woman, I'm huge. I am,
right?
Because we don't do this,
right?
We lost you again.
Yeah.
So just the fact that I was able to get into the door. Am I okay now?
You're okay. We got you back.
I don't know what's happening. But it's a big deal.
I hear you. Felicia, let me ask you, you have a yarn shop in Park Slope in Brooklyn. That's a prosperous neighborhood. You have a shop. It's been around for close to 5 years now. That's an integral part of the community. And yet when I talked to you a little over a year ago, you told me that you didn't really count on it, your shop, to pay your rent.
No, my thing was, you don't say I want to retire. You don't say I'm gonna own a yarn shop so I can retire from being a yarn shop. That is somebody's retirement.
Why not?
Yeah. Well,
why not?
We're trying to change that, right? Like, we're trying to change that notion. And I think, like I explained to you before, I think having been a business as a doctor, you are the business. So it is a very different perspective on what business looks like. And then not only being in the industry, but owning a brick and mortar store is a completely different beast than just being, having a product to sell, right? You got rent, you got overhead, you got employees, and you have to have employees. Because it's so funny. I was talking to another small business owner who just opened. Her and her partner were open 7 days a week, and we're always in the shop or whatever. And I told him, I was like, stop doing that. Like, just stop, because you're gonna be sick. Like, and I did it because I did it. It was like nobody else could be in there. People walked in, they wanted to see me, like they wanted to come in, and people still want to come in and see me. But I have learned over the 5.5 years that it's okay for them to walk in and somebody else take care of them. And you're supposed to hire people who think and act and can imbue your spirit, even though it is not you. They can be your ambassador in your space. That is a requirement of the job, right? They work with me. They understand what I do and how I welcome people in the shop. And that is my expectation, that the same welcome should happen when I am not in the shop, right? So it is owning that brand, right? Which is another thing you have to embrace. That's my brand, right? People come to Park Slope. We become a destination. We become a destination shop, which was like, Adela's like, and I was just like, oh no, they're like, no, you're going to become a destination shop. People come to Park Slope all the time, but people come, they were like, when I can't tell you how many people, when I come to New York City, as soon as I can travel, I'm coming to New York City and I'm coming to Strengthening Studio. I want to come to your knit night. I want to sit in your backyard. I want to do that. We have created a space. And when I say we, it's me and it's my community who work along with me, have created this space where people, I don't care what color you are, they want to come to, I don't care, man, woman, dog, like, I don't care what it is. They want to come, they want to hang out. They want to, they want to sit in the backyard. They want to see Frankie, my Frenchie, you know, they want to eat the bagels from across the street. They want to do all of that because that's what we've created. And it took time to learn about that, like having to rest and when to say no. And, you know, to get back to where you put your money, what companies that you choose to spend your money to stock your store with. Mm-hmm. Like there have been brands that I have chosen, I'm not going to buy from them anymore. Like there's one now that people constantly come in and asking me about. And I'm like, not really into the distributor anymore. So I'm not really sure we're going to carry this much longer. So get it while you can. You know, and it took a while for me to get confident enough to do that. And I think that comes with understanding that we're more than a yarn shop. People can get yarn anywhere. We can all buy yarn online from Adela. They don't have to come to String Thing Studio to buy the yarn.
She sold out.
She sold out, right? So they only when they sold out, when she sold out, they come and buy yarn from my store, or whatever else I have in there. But we are more than just a yarn store. And it took me a minute to understand that.
That's why I should be able to retire someday on what you're doing.
Exactly. Like, you know, I've gotten a lot of opportunities since the pandemic. And as a result of me putting myself out there after being scolded by Gigi so many different times, like, you have a voice. I don't understand why you're not out there doing this. I'm going to fuss at you about X. But I've done more things outside of my shop in the past year that have brought me notoriety and recognition and a spotlight that, I mean, I know people in other industries who would kill to have the recognition, and the people who I have had conversations with, New York Times, thanks to you, Bloomberg Business, you know, to the dig from CB.
American Express.
American Express. You know, I mean,
I've heard of them.
All of these different things that have come up, and they're like, we just like what you're doing. They don't give a crap about the yarn that I sell in the shop. We like what you're doing, and having to get comfortable with that. And being risky enough, taking the risk to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to do this market over here outside of my shop during the holiday season, which is the busiest time of year for me, and pulling it off, you know, trusting to hire employees and trusting them enough to say, you know what, I got this, and trusting them to have it because they have an expectation of, I don't want to disappoint her, and I like what's here and I want it to survive. And that's who I have on my team now, which is great. It's incredible. And it gives me space to be able to breathe, you know, to be able to like stretch a little bit and be able to think about, okay, well, I could actually do X and make more, you know, make a decent living doing that in addition to whatever is coming in at the store, you know. So 2022 is my year of embracing those types of things more, you know, and go out actively seeking opportunities like that. Because it's a niche, you know, I am a niche. My shop is a niche, you know, me in my shop doing what I do, the three of us doing what we do is a niche. And in any other culture, if we were white women and we had cornered the market in the way that we have, somebody would be like, listen, I'm gonna put y'all on a TV show. I'm gonna put you on a such and such. I'm gonna do X. And we would be rolling in it. But that's okay because maybe
we're starting here today.
Absolutely. Right. That's exactly what it is. Just not being fearful. So that's 2022 for me. Mm-hmm. Lauren, you're absolutely right. It's figuring out how to, you know, take this to another level. I already did that during the pandemic. I pivoted to the point I got a hole in the bottom of my shoe, right? Like you couldn't pivot anymore. We did that. You know, we were virtual. We did this. We delivered. We had people on bikes. I take stuff in my car. Like we did all the things, you know, we did it all. People are like, wow, you deliver stuff. I'm like, if you're not far, like, yeah, I'll bring it to you. I got to drive anyway, you know. But it's that level of customer service and that level of care that you don't get most places. And I think that one of the things I always say is difficult to understand why people who aren't really into people get into retail.
Right.
Because you just shouldn't. And it pays off. Like when you go that extra step of saying, sure, I'll call the other store. Like I recommend other stores in New York City all the time, other yarn shops. We don't have it. You should check such and such because I know they carry so-and-so. And if they don't have it, they'll be able to tell you where it is. And people are like, wow, that is really nice because I go in other stores and they don't do that. They don't, nobody told me to come over here to you, or they aren't nice. They don't speak to me when I come in. I'm always still to this day floored that nobody could walk in my house and I not speak to them. That shop is an extension of my house.
Right.
And you treat people a certain way when you invite them into your space, and I unlock the door and turn the open sign around. I'm inviting you into my space.
Yep.
So there's an expectation.
And Lauren, I just want to ask one thing.
Please.
One thing that's consistent between the three of us. The people that come, the people that stay, they come for Felicia. They come for Adela. Mm-hmm. They come for Gigi. You know what I mean? So we all have our special way of being who we are. Mm-hmm. People don't even pay attention to how Adela holds other yarn companies on her back because she will spend. She got mail and I'm like, why is
other people's yarn? She come to my shop and buy other people's yarn.
Every time,
green,
other people's
yarn.
Buy it. But that's because we are people.
That's right.
We enjoy the people and sincerely want other people to be successful. Like I have those secrets. Any way that I can help you, anything that I do that you want to know how to do. Adela's like, you should make people pay for that. But we just, just sitting here listening, that's what it is. Felicia really does. The first time I walked in her shop, if anybody who was watching would told me that I was a liar, that was the first time, because the way that we embrace. Same thing when I first met Adela. I still don't know to this day why we both started crying, but the hug.
I wasn't crying.
She said it wasn't me. I wasn't crying.
Oh. I think you cried first.
I wasn't crying. She wasn't crying either. She wasn't crying, Adela, when we surprised her at that birthday party either. That was a good lie. The same weekend of that first Gigi's Adela's first trunk show, we surprised Gigi and had a surprise birthday party at my house that we lied to her for weeks about. Like literally lied. Like lies after lies. We had stories concocted that
I was on the road.
I'm telling you, they were supposed to be gone. And she was mad because they hadn't called her. They could be on the side of the road. They were downstairs in my backyard under the porch waiting for me. It was really crazy.
I could talk to you guys all day. I got to wrap this up, but I want to wrap it up with one more quick conversation, which is we've talked about some of the negative aspects of what's happened in your industry, and I'd like to finish with one that I think you see as a real positive one, although it was a difficult moment, and that's involves your store, Felicia, during COVID, when I believe your landlord slapped a sign on the door saying that if you weren't going to be paying rent, you would have to find some other place, and you weren't sure what you were going to do and how you were going to save the store.
That's right.
And even though you're the person with the development background, I don't think it was your idea.
It was not. I was totally.
Tell us what happened.
I was totally pushed into. I was on vacation. I had finally had gone on a vacation with my family, and then one of my customers, one of my shop mamas, I call her, sent me a text message like, I just saw this on the gate of your shop, and it was a letter from an attorney's office with this blah blah in it. I had been in conversation with my landlord about we need to renegotiate this rent. Like, I've been closed for X number of months. Business is not the same. People are negotiating it. You couldn't do whatever. And we had made a verbal agreement about some different things, but then he had decided he was going to go to an attorney and purport that I owed him more rent than I actually did, and slapped the letter on the front of the gate. So it made people think when they brought by that I was not going to be open anymore. Had my personal business, my personal address, all this stuff on the taped to the front of my store while I'm on vacation, which he knew I was on vacation. And so it was the last few days, and I was on the phone with, I think I text. It was Della, it was Gigi, and it was Lewis from Brooklyn Boy Knits. And I was texting them, and they were like, "What are you talking about?" I texted them a picture of the letter, and everybody was hot, to say the least. Hot was an understatement. And they were like, "Well, you could do so." I was like, no, let me just think about it. I can try to figure this out. I can try to figure out how to make this work, or maybe I just don't. But then I got a FaceTime, and all four screens, like from all like three faces popped up. And
We
like,
doing a GoFundMe or
right.
what?
That's
Right.
right. And it was like, what do you mean you got to figure it out? We're just going to do a GoFundMe. I was like, no. We don't
Look,
need
and I was like, look, I got to get dressed.
She was like, I'm going to get a
live.
shower and get dressed because I can do it live. And I was like, wait. And they were like, they were like, all you have to do is say yes.
And then move out our way.
Just say yes. And I was like, but they were like, but nothing, just say yes. And I said, but I have to do, Adele was like, I already have the
I said, I wrote it all up. All I got.
While you're talking on FaceTime, you wrote up.
She was like, it's already done. All you have to do is give me this information. Gigi was like, I'm getting dressed, put my face on so I can do it. And Lewis was like, just send it to me so I can promote it. I said, well, send it to me. What do you want me to do? They were like, go to the beach. Go to the beach and sit down and enjoy yourself and enjoy your vacation and let us see what happened. And that was like 11:30, 12 p.m. that morning. And by 6 p.m., we had to close it because we had raised, I think I needed like $17,000 or something like that. We had raised almost twice that much. And people, by the time, because I didn't advertise it on my social media, they only advertised it on their social media.
This happened without you even telling
I told nobody on my followers at all. It was all of their followers, and people who follow them, follow me, were confused. They're like, what are you talking about? And so by the end of the day, we closed it at 6 o'clock because it was just getting embarrassing at that point. And then when people discovered it and were going back trying to figure out how to give, they couldn't give because it was closed. So they were just sending money to PayPal, like sending me PayPal money. Like Gigi said, that little cha-ching sign came up. I was like, I don't even, what do you do? It was people just sending money to me, other yarn shop owners, other people. It was just crazy.
Well, that's it. It wasn't just customers of yours or knitters around the country. You also heard from a lot of people in the industry, right?
Absolutely. They were like, you can't go. And somebody says, I hope you weren't planning on going anywhere because the village said, no, you can't go because you provide something that's not here. You are significant. You do something, you bring something that you don't. And it chokes me up. And I did my thank you video afterwards, which I got through almost without crying. I had to do it twice. I did the second one, I posted and I sent it to people. And then that's when I posted it on my timeline because then all these people started following me. And then my people were like, well, wait, what happened? Like, I don't understand it. So then it was this whole other wave of like, we're buying gift certificates because there's no other way for us. We're going to buy gift certificates for you to just have this cash. And it was the most beautiful expression of support that I have ever experienced. So I know that this industry is not just a fluke. I know that this industry is not like, who does she think she is? Who do they think they are? These brown people doing X. I know that because I still get people who come up to me at different things or send me messages or show up at my Vogue Knitting Lives or come in the most craziest places. I meet people who know who I am. And it can be embarrassing sometimes. Like I was interviewing a guy for my church, like he was getting ready to get hired for a church. And we're doing, I volunteer there and we're doing this virtual thing. And I come on the screen and I usually sit in my office and he goes, oh, well, never mind. I don't have a question for you. I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, well, my wife had asked me, Felicia Eve, is that the woman that has the yarn short? Like, does she knit? And he says, but behind me in my office is a container full of yarn. It's like this big, full of nothing but yarn behind me. It's my backdrop. That was my COVID backdrop. I found something to do with all that yarn I buy at other people's stores, right? And he was just like, but I just looked at your backdrop and I understand it clearly. You're that Felicia Eve, the one who has the yarn shop. And I was just like, well, yeah, but this is not my yarn shop. This is at my house. He was like, even yes, very clear. Now I get it. So it's like, I know in a way that is so heartfelt that I'm doing something good here, and sometimes that doesn't always equate to cash, though we would love for it to do so. But I'm fortunate and blessed enough to be like, sometimes you just need that feeling. You just need to have that acceptance that what you're doing is significant to people. And they showed that to me in a way that was, I'm still overwhelmed by it.
Well, I think that's a great place to stop. I want to say, I saw in the chat, somebody asked about the book that I mentioned. It's called Small Giants. It was written by Bo Burlingham. But I really want to thank all of you, Felicia Eve, Gigi Glaspie, and Adela Colvin. This has been a terrific conversation. I've really enjoyed getting the opportunity to spend this time with you. Again, for those of you who don't know, my company is called 21 Hats. I actually do a podcast conversation that's somewhat similar to this, although not always quite as delightful, with a group of business owners every week. One of my regulars is Laura Zander, Gigi you referred to, who is, of course, one of the founders of Jimmy Bean's Wool and owns Madelintosh now as well. Thank you, all of you. I really appreciate you taking the time more than I expected. I'm sorry we hung on, but I could talk to you guys all day.
This was good. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for the platform and the opportunity. Thank you.
My pleasure. And thanks to everybody who joined us and stayed through.
Thank you guys. You guys have been incredible. I've been reading this stuff.
Yes.
Really appreciate it.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.